lot of people, I was surprised at the people who know their birds. And some, you know, there's a lot of names that people, you know, like we heard people call fish pumpkin seed, which they weren't.
Sure. People just assign names. They'll call a blue jay a bluebird.
Exactly.
Because it's blue.
Exactly. So I got a simple feeder, probably the cheapest feeder you can find on the market. You can have a whole lot of fun looking at your window at a simple feeder. And as we go along, almost immediately, this little guy showed up. This little gray, just a very slate-colored, speaking of slate, it's kind of gray. It's got a white rim.
So they used to call them slate-colored Juncos.
Right.
Now they call them northern Juncos, I think. They changed the name a little bit, but it's a Junco. They're snowbirds. People call them snowbirds.
Very common this time of year.
They show up in the winter, they leave.
This next guy was kind of obnoxious. He came in almost immediately and started running everybody else off. So that is
It's a red-bellied woodpecker. Despite the fact that it's got red on the head, it's a red-bellied woodpecker. A red-headed woodpecker looks quite a bit different, but that's a male red-bellied woodpecker, I believe.
And we're only going to identify what we see at my particular feeder and things that we see on the ground. Now, we may see a red-headed woodpecker, but he looks nothing like this.
No.
He's probably going to be on the periphery flying
Right,
around.
but that's a red-bellied woodpecker.
Doesn't have a complete red head. He's got it, the male has it all the way from the beak back. The female has it from about here back. This...
Hard to say the name, but it's a cardinal.
UK fan, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? Very common. That's a male in in all his glory.
Northern cardinal, yep.
And then shortly he showed up with her.
There's a female.
And then we see...
That's a titmouse.
The titmouse, which we'll show a better picture of here in a second.
And it's like you said, titmice earlier, Mark, and you see it go to the feeder and they carry off a seed and fly to a tree and then they crack it open and eat it. Yeah.
They'll pop
because they can't eat the whole seed. They're and their call sounds like it's one of the distinct ones. It's Peter, 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 Peter.
Here's a kind of a front view of one.
Aha. Oh, and there's a new one. So that is, I believe, a chipping sparrow. It's got that rufous colored head. It's got the white line, and then it doesn't show up real well, but they have a black line through the eye. And they're common, you know, in your yard, tiny little birds. That's a red-winged blackbird with the, like you said, the stripe on its wing. Mm-hmm. Quite noisy this time of year, and I like red-winged blackbirds.
They make a beautiful warbling kind of call.
Yeah.
Pair of doves.
There's a pair of doves. I always like to see doves. But the doves this time of year, they do a lot of cooing, following each other around, and lovey-dovey, they call it. That's where that expression comes from, doves all.
Now we have a villain coming on the scene. This guy does some mean things.
So that's a brown-headed cowbird, and they used to just be out west, but they've as we've opened up the forest, they've moved east, and so they'll lay their eggs in another bird's nest, and the other bird will hatch the eggs and raise it. And sometimes you'll see like a sparrow with this big cowbird following it. They're trying to feed it, and they adapted that because I think they used to follow the buffalo herds. So they followed herds of big animals, they'd lay their eggs and they'd move on.
Okay, I'm gonna call this the dove bird. Surely everybody knows what this is.
Well, if they don't, it's a robin.
Right.
Yeah, and they occur in huge flocks.
And here's our surprise guest.
That's a good one.
This is a little something different.
Yeah, that's a brown thrasher, and it's a member of the thrush family. And like a mockingbird, it does lots of different calls. And I believe brown thrashers, they repeat their calls twice. So mockingbirds do 4 times or more. Brown thrashers, they'll repeat it twice, and they move on to the next call. So if they're doing a cardinal call, they'll do it twice, then they'll do a titmouse call. They're really neat. One of my favorite birds, and they like brushy hedgerows, and
that's where he
around
was.
Around your pool is
backside.
exactly the kind of habitat they'd like.
And that's it for the birds.
Well,
we better go check our food.
All right.